All right, we are live. Welcome everyone to Accuracy in America. Once again, I am Don Irvine and my co-host is Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, drags, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and of course, dog-faced pony soldiers.
Yeah, we are. Don't get quite as much out of us these days as we did with Hillary and under Trump and everything like that. But the time will come when more will be added on this.
So we're not going to change.
Yeah, that's true. But I just wanted to just say, the weather's been great, right? I mean,
heck yeah.
I don't know if we call that spring-like, or it's just been more like an early summer here the last couple of days here.
It's sort of a little summer preview. I mean, mid-80s that's pretty warm.
Yeah. It's. But I'm not complaining.
I don't know if you saw the thing I posted yesterday, but like Europe is looking at, it's already the coldest April in more than 200 years, and they're looking at snow and frozen lakes and stuff in May. So, we're doing better than they are. So
where does that leave climate activists when that kind of stuff happens? I mean,
well, it's interesting that you say that. James O'Keefe got kicked off the internet.
Right.
Did you know that? Project Veritas.
Well, I know they banned him on Twitter, right?
They banned him off of Facebook too.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize.
And his offense was they did hidden mic on a CNN producer. And the CNN producer said, yeah, we tilted everything we could to beat Trump, to knock out Trump. And now that we've knocked out Trump, look forward to seeing, us beat the global warming thing again, because that's what they want us to do. So, it tells you someone above is telling these people to, pump these stories, in the name of a political agenda. So at that point, you're not a journalist at all. You're part of a campaign. And that's what you see it happening. You see them start talking about climate change, and it's getting to be a big thing for the agenda and everything. But it's like it's anti-science at this point to spend money on this.
Yeah, well, now that you say that, that does remind me that I think it was like a week or so ago, there was an article on CNN Business, and it was this really kind of the headline, the whole dark thing about about coal. Okay. And the part, the problem for CNN at this point in time was that the economies, are reviving, but that also means use of coal is increasing. It's like
right.
Kind of like, well, we can't have that.
Yeah, right. And coal is going to become a bigger part before it can decline. I mean, China's average will add more coal capacity this year than we have. Coal, we're trying to do away with it, but elsewhere in the world, it's a reliable source of fuel.
Right, and I think we talked a little bit about that last week, about how Biden's promised to lower CO2 emissions by 2030, but China's like, well, we'll begin in 2030 maybe,
right?
If you can, and that's you still have to just trust the Chinese, which I don't think
you're going to verify it, and they're not even going to start for 10 more years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous. Meanwhile, we're adding $1 a gallon to the price of gas, which adds to, every food you eat, everything you buy, it had to be transported to get it there to sell it to you. They don't make that food at the Giant, or the Safeway, right? They bring it to Safeway. And so that's a tax on everyone in America. It's the same tax, whether you're, a multi-billionaire or a, minimum wage worker. It couldn't be any more regressive. And, they don't seem to care about that. They don't even think it's their fault.
Right.
They're trying to shift the blame on it. They don't think that any of their policy choices cause the fuel market to contract and go up. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we will move on, because we are now just about to the end of Biden's first 100 days in office. And I wanted to get your feeling here, because he's also going to be speaking to a joint session of Congress tonight in terms of, I can only imagine what your take is on Biden's first 100 days to begin with. But, I mean, where are we going with this? I mean, what has he accomplished? I mean, on his promises and things like this. Where are we going on with Biden here?
Well, I mean, I think if you look at it from the leftist angle, they got to be somewhat satisfied with what they're seeing, right? I mean, he's delivering on the leftist agenda. They've tried to make DC a state. They canceled the Keystone Pipeline. They forfeited energy independence. We'll probably have to start importing fuel again, which was a huge geopolitical problem for us for about 50 years that Trump solved, that now they want to unsolve and go back, establish it as a problem for us. The border is a complete mess, and it is totally it's totally their fault, right? They came in, and Trump had the lowest border crossings in 60 years. He had the Northern Triangle countries agreeing to, take our money and keep their people at home. He had Mexico agreeing to have 27,000 troops on its southern border to keep them from getting into Mexico, to keep them from getting here. And we were coming close to finishing the border wall. So the border, we at least had control of the border. And once you get control of the border, you can turn to, what do we do about the 11 million people out here? What do we do about the dreamers? What do we do about visa, temporary workers, and all that is all, that's a political deal that, Washington actually is capable of making and does make on a fairly regular basis, but you can't do it with the border closed. So the first thing they did is went and reopen the border. They're like, oh, no, we don't mean come now. It's like, well, once you create the incentives to come, they quit consulting you on timing. They just get on the road and start going, right? And so the first thing Biden did was cancel these agreements with the three countries, right? Where they're like, okay, we were holding a lot of people back. Why would we hold anybody back? You just told us, you put no value on what we had agreed to with the Trump administration. So, we'll move on to other things. Border, total disaster now. They can't argue that it's anybody's fault but their fuel. You're starting to have hiccups in the economy, inflation, food prices off the hook, right? Because you raised energy costs. Energy costs go throughout the economy. They course it through the whole thing. Foreign policy. It's been a mess, right? We're trying to rejoin the Iranian deal for no good reason, right? It's not promoting peace. The Iranians are working as fast as they can to build centrifuges and so forth. We're back in Syria, right? We're out of Syria. You know why we were out of Syria? Because nothing that was going on in Syria matters to us. It's just not geopolitically important. We tried to act like it was and justify it, but we can't, right? They should just be able to handle their own business. And then you saw, we started pulling out of Afghanistan. And I don't know if you saw this, Biden has said he wants to be out by 9/11. Trump's like, good, I was trying to get us out sooner, So he actually praised Biden for getting out of Afghanistan, but now you're starting to see the stories. Well, they caned a woman for calling a man on the phone in Kabul, right? So see, if we leave, there'll be these human rights abuses. If we stay, guess what? There will be human rights abuses, right? So, and we're spending, we're now up to asking for about $8 trillion since Biden took over, right? We have a lot of money appropriated, not spent in previous coronavirus bills. This is called infrastructure. About 5% of it has to do with infrastructure. The rest has to do with, liberal giveaways and backdoor Green New Deal stuff and so forth. And they may not get this one over the finish line because there's enough opposition to what it is. And it's like, all they really know to do is join international organizations of questionable repute, the WHO, et cetera, and spend money. There's no what if we spent less money? What if we, attacked this problem in a different way? No, the only thing that you can call a success that they've done is vaccine distribution. And they tried to enact their own plan and then abandoned it and just did what Trump had set up. So, so far they're pretty, gang that can't shoot straight down there.
Right. And Bob has chimed in here about this: a thumbs up from AOC equals automatic thumbs down in my book. That tells you a lot. I mean, when AOC says, the Biden administration was less conservative than we thought, it's like, okay, first of all, it's like the thought that the Biden administration was going to be anywhere close to being, what we would call conservative is just ridiculous to begin with on the face of it. But Biden, Biden is, he is marching pretty much in lockstep with a lot of what that liberal left agenda wants to be, right?
Right. I mean, he's not, he's for increased spending, dramatically increased in spending. He'll spend more this year than Trump spent in his administration if he gets both of these things passed that he's trying to get. He's for, open borders. He's for, relaxing drug laws. He's for, taxpayer-funded abortion. I mean, it's like they go right through the book and they do all this stuff that, their far left flank demands, and they don't think about like what it does for the country.
Right. I'm going to read some of this Wall Street Journal opinion piece today from the editorial board. It's called Biden's post-Trump honeymoon. And Mr. Biden won the White House as the anti-Trump, and he has continued to benefit from that persona in his first months. Half the country is relieved to merely have a president who isn't constantly brawling on TV in their living rooms, whether by design or necessity due to his reduced capacities. The decision to husband Mr. Biden's public appearances has been shrewd. He's the calm after the 4-year Trump storm. And we knew that the Journal was never huge on Trump to begin with anyway. The Democrat has been lucky in timing as he took the oath of office as the COVID-19 vaccines were coming online. The White House pretense that it inherited the COVID mess is nonsense. The vaccine production was pre-planned. While some state rollouts were bumpy when there was more vaccine demand than supply, the main job of the administration was to accelerate the distribution that was already underway. And we've talked about this, that, the vaccine thing, this is Trump. I mean, we would not be here on the vaccines without President Trump. The same goes for the economy, which has been growing since last July. And its acceleration was inevitable as people returned to normal commercial and social life. As New York, Michigan, and California have followed the leadership of Texas and Florida in lifting their lockdowns, the inevitable post-pandemic boom has arrived. The same would have happened if Mr. Trump had won. This is not to begrudge Mr. Biden his good political fortune. Any successful president needs some luck, and any politician will take credit for it. With so much wind at his back, Mr. Biden will be fulfilling his campaign pledge to unify the country and govern in a bipartisan fashion. Yet the striking fact of his first 3 months is that he has done the opposite. He has sought to govern from the left, pressing the most progressive domestic agenda in decades with the narrowest Democratic majorities in Congress. He's governed like Bernie Sanders in a hurry, despite a 36-year Senate career with no notable causes or ideas. I love that. Mr. Biden has definitely exceeded the expectations the progressives had. And so, I think, and it goes on, but I think you kind of get the gist of this. It's just that Biden has been fortunate in a lot of senses to have these things fall into his lap. I think about when President Obama took over, and he spent probably up to about 18 months, give or take, where he was, the economy was still kind of just bumping, just having trouble, and he kept pointing the fingers, at Bush, right? Well into his own term. You do inherit the situation of your predecessor, and people will take credit, but they also wish to play. Biden hasn't really had to blame Trump for too much because he's had a lot of good fortune fall his way. But
left a dynamic economy and a vaccine plan and foreign policy and a clean border and progress in the Middle East, which he's sought to undo, right? Yeah, he was left a full deck of stuff. He should have been able to bounce out of there pretty quickly.
Yeah, here it says, on the culture, Mr. Biden has adopted the language and agenda of critical race theory. The man who canoodled with Senate segregationists is unleashing the administrative state to root out the systemic racism of his countrymen. Expect this to manifest itself in education textbook, military training, bank lending, and business hiring. This isn't the result of some late life ideological conversion. Mr. Biden has always been a party man above all, and this is where his party is now. The president is governing as Democrats in Congress want him to. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, channeling their members, are telling the White House to go as far left as the votes will bear. Ignore the Republicans, make whatever modest compromises you need to get West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin's vote, and ram it through. The Senate filibuster may stop some of this, but not because Mr. Biden is opposed. The Democratic media, that is, nearly all the media, will dutifully puff up Mr. Biden as the next FDR. If the economy keeps rolling in 2022, which it probably will, Democrats figure they could survive the midterm elections. That at least is their bet. The political risk is that Mr. Biden never sought a mandate for any of this. He talked about it only in the most generic terms, and then only when pressed in debate. The press corps and Donald Trump made the election all about the pandemic and Donald Trump. Democrats have passed the easy part of their program, handing out money and sloganeering about justice. Now comes the price and higher taxes and cultural diktats. As the practical reality of wokeism and economic transformation make their way into everyone's lives, Americans may decide this is more ideology they thought than they were getting as the price of getting rid of Donald Trump. There's a lot of truth to that, right? I mean, people are seeing, and we're going to see, if this stuff, whether or not it's critical race theory and all these other things, that we're seeing that just here in this first 100 days, if it just speeds up, and we see more of this, and you've already mentioned a lot of things that are happening. I mean, Americans are going to be, a lot of the people who voted for Biden are being like, well, we didn't vote for that. That's not what we expected.
That's right. I'll tell you another one that's coming. So one of the first things they did is they rescinded, Trump had made it where, the Obama administration had set up these rape courts at colleges, right? So if a girl accuses a guy of improper sexual advance, it's like, she tells her story to these, university officials, and then they can decide whether to kick the guy out. He doesn't get to confront his accusers and all that. And Trump overturned that, rescinded that, because he said there was guidance from something. And he said that, it's not due process. In the United States, you get to confront your accuser. We get to hear both sides. We don't just hear the accuser say something and then kick you out, And so they put that back in place. Somebody's going to get victimized by that, and you're going to see, a different, can of beer poured out over that too. So, there's a lot of little bombs out there that, things that Trump had fixed, that they unfixed for ideological reasons, that are going to burn them. The border is already burning them.
Right. Bob has come in back here like the former boss. Mumbles talks a good game, but does little when it comes to countering U.S. adversaries in practice. Consider the case of Ukraine. About face on U.S. warships, Black Sea, as yet no lethal weapons to assist Kiev equals Putin, end to Russian military exercise. He has his answer from Mumbles, a pushover, just like Obama.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. And I want to ask you this, in going along on this, it wasn't part of my initial plan.
You can also say, another example of that before you go into that is the Confucius Institutes and the colleges, which are basically just ways to get espionage people from China into the United States and into our universities, academia, and so forth. Trump said you couldn't get federal funds if you had a Confucius Institute, and so they were getting closed all over the country. And Biden came in and said, "Oh no, we like the Confucius Institute. We like taking care of China where we can. 10 for the big guy." Anyway, go ahead.
Everybody loves Confucius. Apparently. So, well, this kind of goes along with what I was going to say anyway, which is just that, back to what the journal said about the critical race theory. We're seeing critical race theory, and I think it was also the 1619 project. The education departments basically, they want to shove this down the throat in public education. And you're starting to see state legislatures, kind of reacting to some of this, which is interesting to me in the sense is that in general, curriculum is usually the purview for public education of state education boards and the local school boards and things like that. Right. College universities, they kind of dictate, what they're going to teach. But now you're seeing, in Republican states primarily, where they're coming in there and they're like, oh, wait a minute now. Okay, so now the education department is saying you got to do this. I guess that gives them the right to come back and say, no, on this, because I think the journal is right, as we both know, is that they go down this path. and it will get into textbooks. It'll get into the military training.
It's already in military training.
Every aspect of our lives. And that's what That's what the leftist wants. That's what That's what Mayorkas. These guys want, right? They want this kind of stuff, right? But this is just kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, it is, and it's and this is what's one of those things. It's outside. It's popular with about 20% of the people. So, but at some point, you're on a lot of issues where you really don't have a big percentage of support in the country, right? They're leftist priorities, but they're not national priorities. And so, they're pushing all the buttons. And I don't really blame them for that because, they probably are going to lose at least one house in 2022. And it's kind of hard to avoid it now, especially with the redistricting and that, they lost seats and red states gained seats and so forth. The only red state to lose a seat was West Virginia. Which was not a big battleground for this. Anyway, West Virginia they'll be fine. But you're going to get different priorities, right? You're not going to be able to push down people's throat a bunch of 20% issues like voter ID, right? They want to put in this HR 1 that you cannot have a voter ID law in your state. Now, I don't think that, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but I don't believe that's constitutional. I think, state legislatures are who set state election laws. And, but even if you can, that's about a 72% issue. People don't understand. It's like 2/3 among Black people say you should have to have a photo ID to vote. You're pushing an issue that there's no win behind you.
Yeah, if there was ever an example of the era of big government coming back, this Biden administration is showing it all out. And I don't know, have you seen an agenda that is this radical? There was a lot of talk back about what was going to happen to the country under Obama, but right now, what I'm seeing under Biden is far worse and far more dangerous than anything we that happened under Obama.
You really, because with Obama, there was some deference to his vision, right? It's like, what does this guy want to do, right? It was kind of an unknown quantity, even when he was elected president. And so it was sort of like, let's see what he wants to do. And he had his priorities, and we enacted some of them, and, we're still dealing with them and so forth. Biden is an empty vessel, right? The ideologues are in charge. The people, the backbenchers at the political party convention, the people were like, I like you, but you're too crazy to get up here in the front and make decisions. They're in charge. They're running the country, and it's kind of scary. And it's like, can we hold on 2 years till we can start to clean up some of their mess? Yeah, no,
this is something. If I'm
dangerous period for the country.
Exactly. No, if I'm a conservative activist, if I'm just the average Joe American, I should be extremely concerned about what is happening and what is going to happen under this Biden administration based on what we've seen in just a few months already.
And they're not good people, and they're inept. They don't understand, as liberals never do, they don't understand incentives, right? If you say, hey, we're having big giveaways in the United States, people are going to show up to get our giveaway. It is what it is.
And if you don't understand right by now that Biden is really fully a puppet of the left, then you're just really have blinders on at this point, because I like anybody else, Republican or Democrat, I'm willing to give all of them, even if I didn't vote for them, even the Republicans I'd never voted for, supported, I'm willing to give them benefit of the doubt, and let's see what they do first when they get elected to office, and then I can judge them on that. And I was willing to give Biden some time here to do things, but this has been a lot worse than I expected it to be.
It's frightening. It really is scary. There's a lot of capitulation on the world stage, right? Yeah. We're letting bad actors get some big advantages over us, and we're doing nothing about it.
Yeah, I thought Biden would
want it that way.
Yeah.
Huh? Do what?
I thought he would have some backbone, some spine.
Yeah, this looks like the plan. It doesn't look like, we didn't see this coming. This looks like what they intend to do. I used to think, you read the old tracts, like, you got to watch out for the communists. They want to come in and subvert us. And, I know you've dealt with those guys a lot. They're like John Birchers and so forth. And, they're like, they're undermining. They're not going to send nuclear bombs. They're going to do this by going into our institutions and weakening them and destroying them and turning against each other. And people, that's kind of ridiculous. That's what's happening. That's what's going on. They're taking over and rotting out from the inside institutions that we've relied on to be free and prosperous for 200 years. These are dangerous people.
And that does beg the question in my mind too, in terms of, as this is going on, how much can we withstand on this, that before we get a chance to, put a Republican president in office, will that be too late for a lot of these things, or are we gonna have a chance here, by 2024 to turn this tide around, or is Biden going to be, this administration going to be so destructive that this is really going to put us in a deep hole that's going to be very difficult to dig out of?
Well, one of the things that's actually been encouraging to me about this is they have really reversed a lot of the presidential action that Trump took, both alone and in concert with Congress, right? They've repudiated it, repealed it, rescinded a lot of stuff. So what that shows you is the Republicans in office and, properly motivated and explained to and so forth, a lot of the damage can be undone in relatively short order, right? You can go and, put the Keystone Pipeline permit, make it good again. You can go reenact what we had at the Trump border policy. We could go put it back together again. You could fix a lot of this. You could have drilling on federal lands again, which would all, go back to putting it like Trump had it. Well, so it's not, there's a lot of the big stuff could be undone if by properly guided Republican president.
Yeah, well, the question there to me then is that, and I think you've got a good point there in terms of you can go back and reverse some of these things, but what happens? Say, I hate to say Biden gets reelected or Harris gets elected, whichever one you think is going to be there. If they win, and then we're basically facing 8 years of Democrat rule, Keystone, and drilling on federal lands. To me, the longer that has been mothballed and off the books, the harder it is to bring back, and the cost of bringing that back, of restarting that, is going to be tremendous.
Right, and if you're Keystone, right, you can afford to take 2 years off. You can maybe even afford to take 4 years off. It's a big problem for Keystone. They are dramatically the reason for building that pipeline is that the traffic was about to increase dramatically. It's still going to increase. They're still going to pump the oil, and they're still going to take it to the Gulf Coast to refine it. Right? It'll just go by overland and so forth. Now it'll go in less efficient, more costly, more dangerous, more environmentally harmful ways. Right? But it'll still go. So Keystone, 4 years from now they could probably come up with it. 8 years from now, it's like it will be hard to believe that our approval means anything, right? Because it was reversed so quickly and so forth. So, if I'm them, if Democrats win again, I start working around that, because you're never going to get it. If you do get it, it'll be too late.
I think anything that revolves around fossil fuels at this point, the longer things like this that are mothballed or put off, the restart, to be able to go back is going to be much more difficult year by year by year, because we're just seeing such a huge I'm not going to call it a capitulation by world leaders, by corporations, everybody about green energy, renewables, electric cars, and the whole nine yards. So that as that continues to get the push, Honda wants to go to all electric, by 2040. The handwriting on the wall in theory is out there for, fossil gas powered cars. These automakers they're going to phase them out as much as they can in the next 20 to 30 years. And so that makes the payoff period for pipelines and things like that much, just narrows that,
Well, I
scope.
mean, you're going to have to put, electric power in those cars. You got to power them somehow.
Right.
And electric power is more of a burden on the environment, to charge them electrically than to gas them.
Right. I mean, it just kind of shifts things around. I mean, and the thing is that, all of this push, as we have talked about before many times, all this push to electric cars and all this green renewable energy, it's not like it's really cheaper than the fossil fuel alternative.
It's not even better for the environment.
Right.
Right. I mean, what it's going to take to we don't even have it right now. We don't even have the electric power to power all the cars. Right. If it switched today, we'd be lost. Right. So people are not going to live like cavemen. They're going to charge their phones. They're going to have TVs and computers and Zoom calls like we're doing right now, or StreamYard, I guess we're going to have, these things are not going to stop. So when you say, we're just going to use green power and we're just going to mandate that it be 40% or 60% or whatever of the mix, and it's going to keep going up because we're bold visionaries. You're going to come to a day, and and you sort of did last February in Texas, where you don't have the power to meet the need, and the people are not going to accept that. They're not going to live out, by campfires and all that stuff anymore. We've got too much invested in doing it in a better way. So, they have some questions to answer. Where are you going to get all this power? Because green energy does not, you're still in a situation, and people don't think about this. to build a solar farm big enough to match one coal or gas-fired power plant, you would have to clear cut an area half the size of New Hampshire. Okay, is anybody up for clear cutting an area half the size of New Hampshire? Has anybody looked at the environmental impact of that? Right?
Yeah,
no.
yeah,
right? It's like, this electric power will come and it will be great. It's like it's not reality based.
Yeah, you clear cutting. I mean, boy, that's another one. I mean, that they starting to ramp up clear cutting. There's going to be a howls about that too.
Yeah, and if you're going to do it with solar, you're going to be doing a lot of clear cutting. I mean, not just a little, a ton, an absolute ton.
Yeah, I mean, and I've said this. I think I've said this before. I mean, I just cannot imagine. And it may happen at some time in the future, maybe long after I'm gone from this earth. But, I just having a hard time envisioning, electric cars being, basically being the almost only mode of transportation where houses, apartment buildings, everything like this will have to have charging stations. It doesn't seem that it's going to be practical. If you're a two car household, that means you've got to remember to charge one car, and it takes on the normal charging systems, unless you've got a Tesla supercharger, takes most of a night to charge a car. So, what you're going to charge your car? I think there's just
how far can that car go on a charge?
Yeah, and that's the other part of the problem is
150 miles.
The distance. It's getting better, but even so, you know that you're limited as to where you can go with your electric car right now because there aren't a lot of charging stations. I certainly cannot take an electric car from here to Southwest Indiana where my daughter lives because there's no way to do it. We go through the mountains of West Virginia. There are no charging stations there.
Right. You can, and if you did, what are you going to do? You're going to stop and stay a day to get your cars,
right.
a day in West Virginia on your way to Indiana? I mean, no one does that.
So it's just, I mean, can you imagine? I mean, you are like one of the ultimate road trippers, right?
Yeah.
Can you imagine if you had, I mean, how would you manage to make a family road trip the way you do if you had to rely on an electric car and it isn't happening.
Yeah, it's not. You can't tell.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can't do it. It's not going to work.
Yeah. I mean, we've been on the road. We know that right now it's not going to work. All right. So you mentioned something a little bit earlier, which was this, the redistricting, which I want to talk about a little bit, and the census. So they've released the figures of the census of where we now expect, where the gains and the losses will be. And it was different actually to a degree than the initial estimate that came out a while back. Texas, I believe Texas and Florida were, they thought they were going to gain even another seat. I think, above the 2 that they're gaining now. New York might have lost 2, but they're going to lose 1, and they lost the 1 by apparently 89 people, and so New York is going to look at a way to fight that. But as I recall, Utah had almost a similar situation 2 or 3 decades ago, where they were growing, and they came within a hair of getting another seat. But it really, in the end, you can't really fight this in the end. I think. I mean, it's going to be very difficult, and you're pushing up against deadlines. So you've got to get these redistricting things done. We've got an election in 2022, and that's where the maps hit, and so they really don't have a lot of leeway in doing that. But as you mentioned, the Republicans are likely to gain on this based on what's happening there, and which is with the razor thin margin that's in the House right now, and with, as James Carville has already come out and said, which talked about, the Democrats they got to get off that defund the police bus, and in the woke issue, this whole thing is killing them. You've got those things about what they're talking about, plus just the general things we were talking about, but just the left wing agenda as a whole, that all coupled with the fact that there's this population shift. This is not good news for the Democrats for the House in 2022.
No, it's
I don't
not.
know how they will turn the House in 2022.
Carville was very bearish. That interview was interesting. He was like, we talk about things that, he's talking about Democrats and faculty lounge talk, equity and, all this stuff. He's like, that's not that people don't attach to that. They're looking at us as, make it, not considering them in our decision making, and he's like, they you can say that it's been worse for them because, they control the House, the Senate, and the White House, but, that they have some problems. They have some unelectable positions that they are sort of obligated to continue to support. And they've got some people who are pretty fringy and in some swing districts. So, they have problems. And I think that people, anytime you go against the working class, right, the people who actually work Monday through Friday, you can't last like that for long. And right now they are just completely dismissive, with all their anti-police, anti-law and order rhetoric and so forth. People are looking at this stuff and they're like, who's going to defend me if people come to attack my house? Oh, people want to attack your house. Well, I'm looking on TV and people's houses are getting attacked every day. So yeah, maybe they will. So, I think they are in some boxes that are going to be tough to get out of. And, time is kind of getting short for them to sort all this out. As for the, gaining the seats and so forth, my understanding is if New York is stuck with losing a seat, the district they would eliminate is the one AOC holds.
Well, that'd be a victory for our side.
She could run in another district.
Right. She could run another district, but that district is good for her.
It's the most immigrant-heavy district in the country.
And this is the problem. Like with the places that they're losing, like New York and like California, even West Virginia. The thing is that when you lose a seat as your district, likelihood is that incumbents will have to run against each other. If she decides to run against, she's going to be running against another, Democrat or something like
right.
that. We had that case in California, a few years ago, and that was a very nasty fight. That was Berman and who was the other guy? I forgot who the other guy was, but that was a nasty. Yeah, wait a minute. I guess it was Brad Sherman and somebody else. No, it was two Democrats who were fighting.
Right. Sherman and Berman. That's right.
Sherman and Berman. Is that why?
ISO was and
that was kind of
a nasty one against a Republican because they got thrown in.
It's one thing to have Republican Democrat because that can't. But when the Democrats are fighting each other, that's always interesting to me. And they just they just threw it out there and stuff. So you could see some interesting things happen there. West Virginia is pretty Republican now. and that'll be interesting to me because
West Virginia is pro-Trump.
Yeah.
Which is, to the extent that those are not quite the same things, it's more accurate to say West Virginia is pro-Trump.
Okay.
Because, it's a union state, right? It's a big government handout kind of state. So it's not, conservative is really, and even Republican, they're voting for Republicans because that's the closest to expressing their thought, right? But, they're the GOP of Trent Lott. They got nothing for that. That's not what they are.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting because I would think that one of the vulnerable guy in that mix is Alex Mooney, who I've known for years and was a state senator here in Maryland for a number of years. So decision there is that does he run against one of the incumbents? Does he decide not to run, or does one of the incumbents decide that does Mooney have enough heft that they would step out? So we could see retirements. Who knows? It'll be very interesting to find out what's going on. But I think Rachel Maddow was out the other night talking about her take kind of on the Trump influence, or how they were trying to what they did to the census to kind of drive it towards Republicans and not count certain people and things like that. I don't see where the evidence is for that at all.
No, it's a canard that they brought up. These are big population trends, and people have been moving out of the north for a while. It's been accelerated some under the current situation, but that New York loses a seat. I guess New Jersey lost one.
I think that's right. Yeah.
It's not totally shocking. New York has been losing population since the 70s. So,
yeah, the trend is not there. I think though we knew it was probably coming. It would have been more of a shock actually if the results had said that California was not going to lose a seat after all,
right?
Because people are moving out. As I also said before, my fear about all this California, all the people who are leaving is that they're moving into the states, the states that have been more red in the past, and starting to change the politics of their neighboring states of Arizona and things like that.
Texas, Nevada.
Yeah, we're seeing that as they go out. So that's it. But the Republicans still hold a massive advantage on redistricting in I think it was like 100 and what was the figure, 187 or something like that. That it was down from like 219 from 10 years ago, but it was like 187 to 44 in terms of where they have control. The districts the Republicans have control over, and then there's going to be some commissions that will decide it, and then we have divided legislatures that we'll have in there too. But it looks good for the Republicans overall because the gains are where they're doing still pretty well overall, and they do have control. So it
also says, it's a statement about right versus left state governance too. The states that are governed from the right are flourishing, gaining population. The states that are governed by the left are losing and decaying.
Yeah, and the Democrats they made a big push, didn't they, for trying to flip state houses, and they failed this last election.
They failed. They didn't get anywhere. They lost them.
Yeah, I did see a story though about California is that they spent a ton of money about get out the count, to try to make sure that people responded to the census, for this, to make sure that they were counted, because they were fearful that they were going to lose. Now they still lost the seat, but I guess it could have been worse for them, had they not spent all this money. But kind of unusual to see states spend. They spent, I think it was like $187 million or something like that to do that.
Ad campaign, TV and radio ad campaign.
Yeah, big. And there's still debate about, because of the pandemic, how accurate the count was. But it was a pandemic.
Pandemic all over the country though.
Yeah,
these things are relative to each other. So
right, exactly. So you can't say, well, the Republicans benefited by that. It's like it affected everybody. We all stopped. So whatever that is. So we'll wait and see how, when they actually get to what the final apportionments will be. We have these issues going on, even in Maryland, even though there's no change there, but as to whether or not the legislature will try to, reduce Andy Harris or try to find a way to basically wipe him out somehow. You never know. I mean, but when the Democrats control as many seats as they do already, does having one Republican in Maryland really matter? Not.
You said that, not me. I think it's something that ought to be thought about. It's like, it is. Maryland is not. I mean, they're not subtle about this. They're openly. What they did to Roscoe Bartlett, they were proud of it. They talked about, hey, we got redistrict that guy right out of Congress, And so, I think that if you allow corruption like that, you're going to get corruption like that.
Yeah, and we've seen. I mean, Roscoe was like one of the most. It was really blatant there, but it was just below that was when they also, took out Connie Morella.
Yeah, that's right.
They targeted it and they figured it out and they did it. And to this day, I still remember working the polls that following election where people showed up and they were like, "Where's Connie?" And I said, "Oh, things got changed. You're no longer in her district." And they were shocked. And that the average person doesn't realize, the effect of that sometimes. Right. So, but that's the way that they wind up doing this. Biden and talking about masks and the new mask rules and everything like that. He got a little bit of ribbing for wearing a mask yesterday initially, too. But I mean,
he wore a mask to announce that you didn't have to wear a mask outside to announce that you don't have to wear a mask outside again. He also was the only world leader. There's like 32 world leaders in this climate summit. He's the only one with a mask. USA Today actually came out and said there may have been one more who had a mask. So he's in a room alone. He's not talking to them in person, right? You can't spread it through the phone. Maybe he understands that. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know.
I almost decided to start off the show by wearing a mask just for the heck of it, just to honor Joe. But
the mask thing is getting to the point now where I think it's diminishing returns, right? Because I went in my car the other day and I have this little place in the car where I keep masks because I don't wear them in the house unless I've gone somewhere in my car. I don't ever need a mask, right? So I just leave the mask in a car. Well, I get in there and like my 3 go-to cloth masks. But first of all, why do I have to own 3 masks? 3 cloth masks plus the little paper mask I have for when I can't find the cloth mask, right? So they're all gone. And I guess, Lori took them to wash them or whatever, but I mean, they've been there for months, right? It's like, I got to go in there and put that mask on, right? That mask is not clean. It's not saving anything from anything. You put it on tables, right? You pick it up you go to a restaurant, put it on the table where, God knows what sat there before, somebody's purse who's been sitting on the floor. Now it sits on the table and I put my mask there. I've got their floor germs covered up my face, right?
Sometimes you drop it on the ground.
You drop it on the ground. It's like, what do you only have 3. I can't just leave it on the ground, right? So, there's a lot of mask litter now. I don't know if you noticed that. But you're starting to see them, in the parking lots and stuff, right? Because people drop it. Like, I'm not touching that gross thing again, So, who picks that up? So you have all this going on. There's no. And if anybody's watching this and can prove this wrong, please send it to me because I have scoured the internet for this. But there is not a single study that says masks prevent COVID or even reduce your chances of getting COVID, right? It's not there, right? There's, experts say, right? But there's not research. This guy did it. This guy didn't. This guy got better results, right? That doesn't exist, North Dakota and South Dakota. I think we would agree that they're pretty similar demographically, the impact of the disease, the distance from the borders and so forth, right? North Dakota was as mask mandaty as any Eastern Seaboard state. South Dakota never required masks, never shut down any businesses or churches or whatever. They had the same results on COVID. They had it didn't matter at all which policy. So South Dakota was free for a year. North Dakota was locked down for a year, and they got the same results, right? It's the math is just not there. But this is like a social conditioning thing, right? It's like we're more righteous because we still, see the need for masks. I mean, and that's what this is. It's like proclaiming righteousness. It has nothing to do with science, because caseloads are going down. The states that remove the mandates go down a lot faster than the states that don't. So how does that happen if the masks work? It's like, and the thing about it is the virus is too small for the mask. It gets right through.
Yeah. No, I mean,
they don't work, and everybody knows it.
Yeah. It's not like Biden told us anything we didn't know yesterday in terms of, you can wear it. I mean, it's like, I won't wear a mask outside if I'm like the only person, or if I'm just walking around the neighborhood or whatever and stuff like that. But then you have like Joy Reid, who, she said she's admitted to wearing 2 masks while jogging outside. She got a lot of ribbing for that. Anyway, we're down to the last couple of minutes. Let's go.
So you have a bunch of stuff in here. One thing is I wanted to say, I want to actually speak to 2 of them, and I'll go really quick. One is the Washington Post closing the lie database. Okay, Biden, let's recall that Biden's whole campaign is based on a lie, right? If you ask Biden, why did you run for president? What made you decide to come off the sidelines and do this? And his answer, his official answer, and this has never changed or varied, is the very fine people speech. I saw that's bigoted speech, and I had to come in and save America, right? That's what he says, okay? The very fine people thing is a hoax, right? But Trump specifically excluded white supremacists and haters from who he was saying were the very fine people. Everyone knows that, including Biden. But that's all he ever says is his reason. He hammered that repeatedly during the campaign trail, during the debates, throughout the whole time. And it's a lie. So you tell me this guy, his whole imminence in politics right now is based on a lie. The other one I did want to get to is LSU, huge thing, hiring Kim Mulkey. It's even bigger than people think. The NCAA did not charge anybody a year of eligibility last year. It was if you got to play a year for free, right? Eligibility wise. So they had 5 seniors at LSU, and all of them had agreed to come back, including the best player, who was the previous coach's niece. And so if they all come back, and they'd also had grad transfers from Alabama and Vanderbilt. So, they're kind of ready to be loaded right now. And, if you were one of those 5 seniors, wouldn't you go for a year of playing for Kim Mulkey? Wouldn't you say, yeah, I'll hang around, see how that goes, right? But Louisiana girl coming home, she's from pretty close to Baton Rouge, about 30, 40 miles outside of Baton Rouge. And I can't wait to see what comes of that.
Yeah, I had to put that on the list because I knew that hit home. And, that was a shocking revelation when I saw that, to see her leave Baylor like that. But, you can't ask, it's like, it would be like if Gino left UConn or something like that. It would just shatter, it would just shake the world. Because, she'd won championships at Baylor.
Yeah.
She's not necessarily the warm and fuzzy type of person, I think, but
that's okay.
But she gets it done, right?
Right. That's right.
She gets it done. And so, she's going to close out her career in Louisiana, probably.
Yeah.
And everything like that. So good for LSU. Yeah. So Bob has chimed in. Bravo on Coach Mulkey here. Yeah. I don't think people in Louisiana are if you're in Baylor, you're like, oh man, what am I doing now? Yeah. But anyway, all right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Please, as always, stay safe, stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. God bless America, and we will see you again next week with more riveting discussion. At least I hope it's riveting.
It's always riveting.